Firstly, I just need to quickly contextualise the footage playing in the background, as well as some of the points I'm going to make. I have never been able to play Sonic Adventure or its sequel, and all observations of how accurate it is entirely built off footage from other people's gameplay. So, if I make a complaint about how the moveset is laid out, or how the character plays, or I miss any Easter eggs, or even if I just make a blatant mistake about how he plays in the originals, that's why. Now enjoy the video. I don't think I saw any build up for Adventure Sonic's release. No trailers, no announcements, nothing. But suddenly, my comments and Twitter feed are filled with people playing Adventure Sonic and saying how good he is. In under a week, he's managed to become one of the most downloaded characters in SRB2. He's a good character, and the praise is well deserved, but I do have some small complaints with the mod. Before we get to the actual moveset or sprites, I just want to talk about Adventure Sonic's momentum. Adventure Sonic is very accurate to the Adventure duology, which means that he has tweaked physics compared to the vanilla characters. He's a little floatier and controls less like a tank, but I do find that he is a little slower to speed up from a standstill if you aren't using spin dashes or the such. Honestly, I kinda like it. Platforming feels a lot more natural, and the use of speed lines makes the speed ceiling you eventually hit a lot less obvious, or at least less notable. Guess what is mapped to jump? Did you guess the homing attack? Ding ding, correct. Like seemingly every mod, Adventure Sonic is a homing attack mapped to double jumping. I don't need to explain what it does. I will say though, this specific iteration does feel very natural. It has a satisfying range, and unlike the R2 Sonic mod I covered last time, you get a decent amount of horizontal movement after hitting an enemy, which means you can pretty easily pull off a homing attack chain. Also, like a lot of other homing attacks, if an enemy isn't in range, then Adventure Sonic instead gets a burst of momentum directly forward. I don't usually mention it, because most of the time the mod will just make it a thock, but Adventure Sonic does it a little differently. I don't particularly know what you'd call it, but it's less extreme and has a bit more of a curve to it. Generally, I think this is what the thock should be, a tool that can be used for both getting up to speed quickly and as a platforming tool, even if it would sacrifice some of the range the thock can provide. Spin has many abilities mapped to it. In air, pressing it will cause you to bounce. I don't know whether it is more efficient to quickly spam the button to get extra height, or whether it's based off how many times you press it, but like most bounce iterations, I still haven't found any areas where it is particularly useful. In general, it's just far too weak to really perform any obvious shortcuts with it, and the homing attack is a far superior option for when you need to attack something. Once grounded, you get the old Sonic Adventure spin dash. It's good. I'm no pro with it, but I've seen people pull off some really interesting stuff with it. Like the OG Adventure, your best bet is probably just to spam it, as it can pretty easily scale up walls and speed through areas when doing so. Finally, if you charge up a spin dash for long enough, you can light speed dash. Functions as you would expect, although the fact it's mapped to the spin button does mean it can be a little inopportune to use at times. I'd personally map it to the custom 1 button, but considering Metal Wario 64 makes it fairly explicit that this is built for newcomers on controller, who'd understandably wouldn't have this mapped yet, I can see why it's there. And before we move on to Supersonic and sprites, there's 2 minor things I noticed while testing the character. Adventure Sonic, if moving slowly enough, will stop before running off ledges and can also grab them. I'd assume this is also due to the mod being built specifically for newcomers on controller, as a quick safety net while they figure out how SRB2 works. It's a nice touch. Supersonic. After collecting 50 rings, jump and press custom 3 to become the embodiment of dreams himself. Supersonic will of course play like a, well, super version of the standard Adventure Sonic while on the ground, but pressing custom 3 will cause him to play more like the version from the SA2 Final Hazard fight. Jump to ascend, spin to descent. Pressing jump twice in quick succession seems to grant a quick momentum boost. Honestly, one of the better and more unique super transformations, although that's not exactly high praise. Here's an unpopular opinion. I don't like the adventure design for Sonic. I think it only really holds up due to how artists drew it instead of how it was modelled and conceptualised. I think it lacks the iconicity of the classic or the streamlining of the modern design, existing kind of as an awkward middle child. The sprites in this mod also don't give it a lot of justice. While it is applaudable just how many unique sprites were created for this mod, and just how detailed they all are, I feel Sonic looks a bit off here. He's very tall and lanky, with even thinner arms than the original model the design is based off of. He isn't really in proportion to the rest of the level around him. He's not too tall to make him look off, but when every other mod cat shrinks their character down to fit with the vanilla cast, it takes a little getting used to. A couple of people in the Discord said it looks like it was built off of a model, like how Donkey Kong Country used models that were converted into sprites to reduce storage size. I don't necessarily think that's the case. I think it's just an extremely accurate portrayal. But I do think that compared to other mods, Adventure Sonic wasn't really modified to fit the SRB2 art style. Like the classic games, SRB2 was a little rounder and more cartoony than the Adventure era. So seeing a character with the style quos and late 90s edge of those games doesn't quite fit. But while I don't particularly enjoy his design, the other creative choices the design team made are great. The overlay that appears when you're notified Super Sonic is available looks awesome, as are the transformation sprites. Once transformed, the directional aura that appears when travelling up or down really works well, and the fact that these, I suppose bubbles would be the most accurate term, appear while flying looks really cool. And of course, how can we neglect to mention the level end posing we get? I think this mod is the first to do this, and while I'm not a massive fan of the sprites the rest of the time, I think they really shine here. And to top it off with that signature Ryan Drummond voice snark is the cherry on top. I really hope version 2.3 of the game brings in some voice lines for the characters, as playing mods like this, Modern Sonic and Mario, make me realise just how empty SRB2 can often sound. I don't think it'll come as much of a surprise to say that Adventure Sonic is getting a 10 out of 10. Ignoring the fact that I probably get skinned alive and roasted for giving it anything else, the sheer quality of the mod as a whole helps me ignore some of the minor complaints I have about the mod, like its sprites and slow movement start. Not much more to say about this, other than the fact this is probably one of the first mods I recommend newcomers play. There isn't an over-reliance on custom buttons or multiplayer only ones, and he was built ground up for controller, the playstyle I'd assume most people would at least start with. This is the Jackoman, thanks so much for helping me reach 300 subs, and ciao.
Hey, I'll play with you some other time.